and welcome to Conch Productions CSP Artist Chat September 2025. And as you all may know, we are having an amazing series of readings as part of our Blue Light Series event at QPL, Queens Public Library in Forest Hills. And today we have one of the amazing featured artists. We have Reynaldo Piniella, our amazing Puerto Rican and Cuban heritage playwright, and we're going to be featuring his play, Sons of an Unknown Father, as I said, on September 25th. Now, I want to welcome you to the stage, Reynaldo. You're an amazing award-winning actor, playwright, educator, producer. I mean, multi-hyphenate much?
Hey, something got to keep the bills paid, so got to do it all.
How are you today?
I'm doing very, very well. Excited to chat with you, excited to virtually meet your audience, and excited for this reading in September.
Yes, yes. So tell us a bit more about this journey to you being the playwright. Now, we met first many years ago. You were playing my son in a,
Hmm.
and you're phenomenal. And you're a playwright. I mean, I'm loving this. I'm so big on actors being playwright, directors, producers, like the multi-hyphenate thing, because I figure I have a whole family of fellow multi-hyphenates. So tell me about your journey to playwriting and what drew you to playwriting.
So, came to theater as an actor, and I really loved it. And I particularly loved working on new plays. Like, I love the collaboration in the room where a playwright would come in with new pages, responding to the thoughts and energy in the room from the actors, from the director, from all of the people around the tables. And for me as an actor, what I found is I wasn't always in control of the stories I was telling, right? I was so often excited to be working, right? That's always a gift as an actor. But I felt extra excited and motivated when I was telling stories that was maybe rooted in my community, rooted in my passions, rooted in particular causes that I really wanted to advocate for. So I remember waiting, saying, "Oh, I hope someone writes a play about this." Or I hope someday someone makes a story about that. And then one day, I was actually playing Romeo at the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival. And I was just talking to a friend. We were in tech rehearsal. And I'm like, man, I love Chekhov. And, people like us, we are both people of color, we rarely get cast in those kind of plays, even though, we're forced to study it in school, because Chekhov is a great writer, of course. My friend off the cuff was like, well, why don't you write a Black Chekhov play? Right? A play that is rooted in all those Chekhovian, you know, themes and overtones that we love and really love digging into as actors, but just with people that look like me and you on the stage.
Mm, mm,
So that's
mm.
what I did. I'm out of town. I'm in St. Louis. There's a lot of free time when you're doing regional theater,
Yeah,
before the show. So I
yeah.
started writing a play. I got some friends to read the play. They told me how bad the play was, but I just kept doing it and I kept, rewriting over and over and over again. And I kind of fell in love with using my imagination to tell stories on a stage, to really tap into that childlike thing that draws us to theater so often. So from that initial idea about a Black Chekhov play, then I'm like, well, what if somebody wrote a play where the devil is the character? And what if I did a one-man show? So it just kind of jumped off from there in an exciting and unexpected way, particularly during the
Mm.
pandemic when it was like, hey, I'm stuck in my apartment, there's nothing to do.
The pandemic birthed this voice. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And I think what it was, the pandemic for so many of us was that time of self-reflection, right?
Mm.
Where we got to assess, what's that artistic itch that I've been wanting to scratch that I haven't dug into yet. And for me, it was really committing myself to the craft of playwriting and what that
Mm.
actually meant, to
Mm.
call myself a playwright as opposed to someone who, wrote a play and, is trying to figure out his voice, me actually getting crystal clear on what my voice is, what are the stories that I'm passionate about telling, and who my stories are for, you know?
So I love the fact that you're saying that you got to assess what your voice is. So to an actor out there sitting right now, student of acting, someone feeling the same way as you, I've got to tell stories that really matter to me. How did you start your process of, yes, I'm a playwright? right? No, I'm a multi-hyphenate, including playwright. Did you go back to school? Did you pick up books? What are the words of wisdom that you can share with them on how to say yes to yourself as a writer?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, related to this blue light reading series, I allowed myself to really be in process. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is so often as, a writer, before we even start the script, we're worried about how do I get it produced? How do I sell it? Right? As opposed to being like, hey, let me just figure out what that first line is, right? Let me figure out
yeah,
the relationships, all of
yeah.
that. It allowed myself to not feel like I had to have a perfect first draft. I actually just said to myself, let me figure out how to create a discipline as a writer. So what I would do is I would write 5 pages a day. I really broke it down in a digestible way. Look, I would cheat sometimes. I'd be like, the title page is 1 page, the character breakdown is 1 page. I would cheat like that. But, in a month's time, all of a sudden, you have 150 pages that you wrote, right? And it just became that daily ritual for me where by developing that discipline, I felt like I could call myself a writer, and I wasn't calling myself that based on someone else giving me an award, someone else, giving me the sort of permission to be a writer. I myself would say, hey, I'm doing this because I need to tell this story. The same way as an actor, we have our discipline and craft. I wanted
Hmm.
to develop that as a writer. To me, it was really about let me figure out my own technique, what works for me, so that when I write, I feel confident in what I'm doing and I know exactly how I work. So then a company like you, your company, you approach me, I know exactly how to say, okay, this is how I can use this amazing time, these resources, and maximize that. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that everyone watching is getting this idea. Create a discipline, trust in your voice, stick to your discipline. Everyday work, everyday write. It doesn't matter what it is. So let's talk about the script that you're
Mhm.
going to be presenting on September 25th, Sons of an Unknown Father. What inspired that piece?
Yeah. So honestly, the first inspiration for this piece came from a friend, actually. So one day, a friend of mine is at a yard sale of all places. And they text me and they say, hey, there's a statue of this guy, and it feels like something you would want. Do you want it? The most random text, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah. Like I just say, yeah, I have no idea what it is, but my friend is like, I feel like you want this. And it's a statue of actually Martin de Porres, a central figure in my play, one of the sons in that plural sons of an unknown father, right? And it was so interesting. I'd never heard of this person, knew nothing about him, but in some way it felt like his story was called to me. For those people out there who maybe have never heard of Martin de Porres, he's the first Black saint of the Americas. He's an Afro-Peruvian saint. And he was a guy who was his mother was born into slavery. He wasn't canonized for 400 years after his death for a multitude of reasons, many reasons having to do with, him being a black man, right? And him having to juggle his identity, try to prove that he's worthy enough to be in certain spaces that weren't made for him. Those were so many things I could relate to in my own way. So I did all the research into his story, the historical research, but there's so much about him that is told in the way that maybe people want to tell the story, meaning he was a perfect man, everything was great. And I'm like, none of us are perfect. All of us have our flaws. All of us have been tested. We're not always our best versions of ourselves as well. So in thinking about that, I was like, okay, Martine so wanted to reconnect with his father.
Mm,
On his own birth certificate, it says son of an unknown father on his birth certificate, right? That's where the original name, the singular son came from, right? So in thinking of another fatherless son, I was drawn to a fallen angel that many people perhaps know of as, I kind of don't even want to spoil it. I want people to come and see who I'm talking about. Maybe people
don't
have already
spoil it.
caught on. Yeah, don't spoil it. But there's another figure who has a very strong reputation, you can say. Many people are quick to judge, rightfully so. And I was like, well, what happens if we actually deal with what it means to be two men guided by opposite sides of the spectrum, by the good and the bad, or the light and the dark, whatever you want to say. But then they have to work together to reach a common goal. So that's a brief overview of how the story came to me, and I'm excited for audiences to engage with it.
I love that. So I love how you were saying that you were inspired by a gift, right? And and I love the concept of this story being about this person who was of African heritage and how they became a saint. And I'm kind of curious about the social and cultural environment that we're in right now, where we have a pope that has been highlighted as someone of Haitian heritage, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Do you think that this piece is really an urgent piece at this time during the for Roman Catholics, because a saint is part of the Roman Catholic community? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the play, just based on the historical moment that the play is set in, you're dealing with themes of colonialism, you're dealing with themes of, conflict, war, all of these big issues that we can see not only here, but internationally, right? We're seeing internal issues in terms of representation in the play. So many people in our, communities talk about, we have to behave a certain way, we have to do this certain thing in order to be accepted, in order to assimilate, right? But what is the cost of that? Right? Are you ever truly accepted? So, in thinking of the future that we're living in our modern world, I think a story like Martin de Porres is a great lesson of what it actually means to serve community, to be in community, what it means to resist or not resist, but also themes of redemption, right? None of us are perfect. I think this is a story where one of my central characters is definitely trying to redeem some of his missteps along the way. So I think the story of Martin de Porres is both a cautionary tale and a hopeful tale at the same time, based on the moment we're in.
And I really love how the text is in Spanish and in
Mhm.
English. What are you hoping to inspire in the audience by having Spanish and English in the text?
I always think of multilingualism as a kind of superpower. Like, I think it is truly
Mm.
amazing that, particularly in this play, the powers that be are, they speak one language, right? But then the people who in this society might be looked at as lower class, they speak multiple languages. So they're actually able to bridge those divides. So when we think about the Caribbean, you think about all the different, not only languages, but accents, musicality, that exists. And just in that sound, that's all that history that's contained in that. So I think for me, I wanted to show how even the idea of status and power is so rooted in language in that way. Spanish is a colonizing language, of course, and then also how is that reclaimed by these people? How do they find power in that? Being able to speak their mother tongue, but then also the tongue of their oppressors at the same time.
So I love how you mentioned that Spanish was a colonizing language. What did you discover in your workshopping of the piece with Sasha Wells, who's our
Mhm.
co-resident dramaturg for Conch Productions, about language, about your characters, about the world you were building that helped you move your play forward? Because Conch Productions Blue Light Reading Series is a workshopping series, not simply read your play as it is,
Mhm.
but let's like take it to the next level. What did you discover?
Absolutely. So related to language holding power and status, Sasha really encouraged me to put more Spanish in the play. Certainly there's so many playwrights that worry at times about alienating audience members because, an audience might only speak English. But when you think about Queens, New York, where this reading is happening, I grew up in Queens, you think about all the different languages that you hear when you ride that 7 train or whatever train you're on in that way. And, us noticing that, like, hey, we pick up little things here and there, and how someone can be in public but have a private conversation at the same time, even though they're sitting right next to somebody. So playing with that in the play as well. And Sasha also really helped me think about how gender plays into the play. You know, she really recommended this great book to me about actually Peruvian saints who were women at the time, right? Which was actually really fascinating to think about how the church is still, it not only excludes people of color, but also women, right? And what is it for Martine to be raised by this single black woman? right? To be nurtured by these women in his community and advocate for them and what that actually means in that particular time period. So Sasha has been super awesome in that way for me to really think deeply about like, what is the story you're telling? What are the questions you are asking? And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel because she's like, everything you have there is the base. Now let's build on that, right? Because then the audience is going to be the last ingredient. Then how is it received? How did this audience engage? How do they ask questions about it? Knowing that the Blue Light series for me is not the end result, right? Because it's a workshop setting, but it's that next step that's necessary for me to get closer to where I'm trying to be.
How is this experience different from other development experiences you've had? Because you've been developing this piece for a while.
For me, this reading series is really important because it's an opportunity for people to come together and see stories and realize that, oh, we're all a lot more connected than we think we are, right? The story in my play is about an Afro-Peruvian saint, not necessarily a story that you would think of as Caribbean, but then all of a sudden, when you hear the play and engage with it, you're like, oh, I've had those same questions. I speak that same language. I eat that same food. All those little tiny things that really show us that, oh, wow, we're not separated into these different affinity groups. Sure, you were born this place, I was born this place, but this reading series is a chance to remind ourselves that, like, hey, if we're all in this room together in this library in Queens, there's something that brought us here. And I think that's what makes this series special and unique is you're inviting audiences in to engage with the working process that doesn't assume they know everything, right? You're saying, hey, you're from the community that this writer is from, that this writer's hoping to champion. And now for this writer to get where they need to be, we need you in the room, right? This is not something that's a transactional relationship. You're actually a part of the process. So that's been super helpful for me, particularly coming from Queens, because I remember coming up as a young theater artist and not always feeling like there were places where I could see my own stories on stage.
Exactly. That's how I grew up, wondering where am I in this story,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So if there are three words, one, two, three, that you could use to describe Sons of an Unknown Father, what would they be?
Kinetic is number one. Two would be redemptive is the word. And the third word would be healing would be the last one.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I'm so excited to see the amazing work that your director, Kevin R. Free, is going to be doing on this project. And a number of the actors have been working with you on this project. So this is really exciting for our audience to see a community of actors that really have been part of the lifeblood of your story. So I want to button it with your words of wisdom. I know we touched upon all these amazing words of wisdom that you have for our audience of emerging writers. Just share one phrase, one set of words, one wise statement that can help our emerging playwrights of Caribbean heritage, of all heritages, of all the cultures that exist in the United States. What are some words of wisdom that you give to them to help empower them on their journey?
When you apply to opportunities, you don't need to prove yourself because the opportunity is a chance for you to grow into it. And what I mean by that is when we put ourselves out there, when we write that play, right? When we do a thing, we're not looking to win the Pulitzer Prize at the very beginning. We're looking to take that first step towards that finished product, right? So allowing yourself the grace to begin the process, to be in process is so necessary as an artist. So not looking at, oh man, this is too fancy for me, this is too big. It's saying, I'm going to put myself out there so that I can grow into that. So that's just a phrase I'm taking with me that I wanted to offer for anyone who's doubting themselves, who feel like maybe their voice doesn't matter. They've been getting those rejections, like that's all part of the process and it's helping us grow into the artists we hope to be.
Thank you. That was something I needed today. So you've blessed me.
Mhm.
And I hope you all are feeling blessed right now. And I hope you have looked on our website or gone to our Instagram page and scanned our QR code and made your RSVP. And if you haven't, you better get on it because you have to see this play. When? September 25th, 5:30 p.m. Forest Hills Library, not hard to find, EFR to Forest Hills. Be there, meet Reynaldo, see his amazing work, and share your opinion, because as he said before, this is a process and we need you to be there to champion his voice. Tell him what you are feeling. Thank you so much, Reynaldo.
And thank you.